All right, it is June 2026, and if you are thinking of refinancing, purchasing a home, selling a home, or just have questions about real estate in general, you have made it to the right place. But before we talk about June and what's expected, let's do a quick recap of May. So, um, May, we saw interest rates start to settle. Back in February, we got to around 6% interest rates, and then we started to see in April maybe a sub 6% interest rate, which of course got buyers really excited, provided some temporary relief. And then what happened was May rolled around and interest rates went up right around 6.3 to 6.4%. While again, not an extreme jump, it still felt manageable to lots of buyers. But what happened was two things. First was the Federal Reserve met at the end of April, and they said that for the time they are pausing all rate cuts, which kind of eliminated some of the enthusiasm that the market had going into May. The other reason is that with oil prices and the conflict overseas, there's still the worry that inflation is going to be very going to stick. And when inflation sticks, there's the fear of inflation either staying there or getting worse. The mortgage market is going to respond unfavorably, and it is going to drive interest rates up. So by May 20th, the average 30-year interest rate climbed to about 6.5%, and that had been the highest that we have seen since August of 2025. But it kept going as we got into the end of May. Unfortunately, interest rates kept going up. They kept going up. And then finally, by the end of May, we landed right around 6.7% on the 30-year fix. But then we started seeing rates pull back a little bit down to the 6.3, 6.4%. So, which is good news because, again, we're seeing inventory slowly start to build. We're seeing some reprieve in the interest rates. Does this mean that there's finally relief coming for buyers, or does it simply mean that this is the new normal? Well, where do things stand today as of June 2026? Well, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage is still hovering between 6.3 and 6.5%, depending on where you're gathering the data, and of course, too, what time of day or what day you're looking at the markets. So this is what is keeping mortgage rates inflated. It is inflation and global uncertainty. So consumer prices haven't returned back to the 2% inflation target that the Fed had set for their goal to continue rate hikes. In fact, inflation seems to still, again, being really stubborn, kind of staying stagnant. And as a result, the Federal Reserve is really hesitant to put any more rate cuts on the table for the rest of 2026. Now, going with that, with the global uncertainty, there's a ceasefire and then it's gone, and then a ceasefire and it's gone. So what's happening is that investors are really nervous and they are just really not feeling confident in what's going on overseas. So they are holding rates steady and higher than we have been throughout 2026 so far. So as far as the housing market goes, the overall inventory seems to be slightly increasing. Now, I don't mean it's like a huge jump and there's all this open inventory. I mean that it's a slight increase. The active listings have increased across the country, and it is giving buyers more opportunities than we saw going into 2026 and even in the first quarter of 2026, which is important to note because even though mortgage rates are a little bit volatile, they do seem to be going up little by little. The fact that there is an opportunity for new listings is huge because it's giving buyers more to pick from, and it's showing that there's still a need for sellers to sell to be able to, do whatever they need to do. So, for buyers, what that means is that the market, as far as home buying goes, is better than it was 18 months ago. Affordability has increased, which I know it sounds counterintuitive with mortgage rates slightly going up, but the reason why affordability has increased or improved is because wages have increased slightly. interest rates are still manageable, but because there are more opportunities as far as inventory goes, buyers are able to negotiate for more seller paid assistance than they have been in the past, even again from earlier this year and into 2025. So if you are a current homeowner, why does this benefit you? Especially if you are one of the ones who bought during the COVID time when interest rates were 2-3%. Well, it's hard, because you don't want to necessarily trade that low of an interest rate for something that's in the mid sixes. However, because of the equity that's been built, homes are still appreciating. And I do believe that that's one of the reasons why we're seeing more activity pick up is because people are realizing that, the mortgage market is what it is. Home prices are still going up. And so your equity position is increasing, which means that you are sitting on a good amount of money that you can either use to cash in, buy something else, reduce your payment, or consolidate debt, plan a vacation, pay for college. There are just so many different things that you can use that money for. So what happens over the next 90 days? Well, the general consensus is that as overseas tensions start to ease, that we will see mortgage rates come back down into roughly 6.3%. Now, for interest rates to drop into the fives, which I hear a lot, people are waiting to buy until they hit 5%. We're going to have to see some pretty drastic improvements in the market. For example, we're going to have to see a pretty steep improvement in inflation, and not just like a slight improvement year over year. I mean like a very steep improvement. The Fed is going to not cut rates as long as we have a strong, buoyant jobs market. So what the Feds want to see, unfortunately, is job loss. They want to see less hiring and more firing, basically. They want to see the unemployment number go up for them to be able to justify cutting the rates when partnered with the inflation rate going down dramatically. But on the flip side of it, if inflation gets worse or there's continued strong job growth, Federal Reserve has talked about the potential of hiking rates. And if that happens, we will see interest rates rise along with it. But we will see what happens. A lot of this is really hinging on the conflict overseas because, again, with mortgage rates being so bound by inflation and just the threat of inflation, what happens overseas and with oil prices is really going to tell us what we can expect from mortgage rates and where they're going to go. So we will see what happens, but overall, from a general market standpoint, I'm very happy that affordability is getting better, that there are more wins for buyers because buyers have really struggled over the last 5 to 6 years. And so to see these opportunities for buyers open up while sellers are still winning at the same time is really great news for our overall real estate market. So stay tuned. Let's see what happens this month, and fingers crossed that we'll start to see some improvement once this conflict gets to its ending point.